So people are a bit fed up of Bethesda at the moment, and for good reason. If you watched my last video, then you'll be well informed on why people are angry. But for those of you that haven't, I'll put it shortly. Bethesda's game design and writing quality has decreased considerably with every major release since Morrowind. They've consistently dumbed down the RPG elements of their games, like Fallout 4's dialogue. They've left bugs on their engine that as of 2018 are 16 years old. They're selling mods to players, hiding them behind the name Mini DLC, first with a failed attempt on Steam, and now with the Creation Club. They've scammed their fans with the false advertising of canvas bags and Nuka-Cola Dark Rum. It looks like they're now launching their PC titles exclusively on the Bethesda launcher, which has a no refund policy. Todd Howard has lied about almost every game they've made, exaggerating gameplay features like the 200 endings for Fallout 3.
So as of last week, we're over 200 endings. That is not an exaggeration.
They've been using the same engine for 17 years without doing enough to modernise it, meaning it's unoptimised, outdated, and the graphics of the games are pretty bad. They have also confirmed that they will be using the same engine for Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield, and the list goes on. So as a company that used to be pretty much universally admired, Bethesda has fallen from grace pretty hard. Corporate greed and laziness have ruined what was once a great game developer, but it isn't too late. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the actions Bethesda needs to take to redeem their once esteemed reputation, starting off with talking about how Bethesda should go about fixing Fallout 76. You can't argue that Fallout 76 isn't one of Bethesda's weakest titles so far. It's very different to anything they've ever released, and while I like developers experimenting, this game failed to do much right. I do believe, however, that this game can be a strong foundation for them to build on. Let's not forget how far Sea of Thieves and No Man's Sky have come since launch. Bethesda announced that they would support this game with free DLC as long as people kept playing it. However, this was announced before the poor sales and review bombing. So there's a chance that Bethesda may have made plans to jump ship on this game since. But they really need to stay on board and try and fix this thing. Beyond the self-inflicted damage already done to this company's reputation, failing to support and add to this game, which they promised would have free DLC as long as people kept playing, would be a spit in the face to many fans. So if they stay on board to fix this thing, when they finally fix the plethora of bugs, exploits, balancing problems, and bad optimization, Bethesda still have a lot on their to-do list. One of the problems is PvP. When developing Fallout 76, they clearly took inspiration from games like Rust, but made sure to make 76 far less hardcore. PvP, which is an essential part of an online survival game like this, is pretty useless in this game, and there's little reason to partake in it. To initiate PvP, you first shoot someone, and your weapon only deals a fraction of its full damage until they return fire. Then, and only then, can you deal full damage to the player. This is to essentially give the other player a chance to say no to combat. After the fight is over, whoever is killed drops all of their junk into a little paper bag which can then be looted. The player who dies loses nothing beyond their junk. Bethesda had to take these soft-core precautions because a lot of Fallout fans don't want the hassle of PvP and the potential of losing all of their stuff to a griefing player while playing a Fallout game. The simple solution to this problem is to make two types of servers. PvP and PvE, just like how Ark Survival Evolved manages it. This way, players have a choice of which way they want to play, hardcore or softcore survival. Another feature I'd like to see, which Bethesda has already talked about adding, is faction PvP. You cannot currently align yourself with any factions outside of doing the main quests, so allowing the player to join a faction and partake in faction PvP would add a lot to this game. They could really play around with this, maybe even adding faction ranks, territory wars, and allowing players to build faction headquarters and outposts around the map. Each faction could have distinct goals. For instance, Raiders would have a sole focus on raiding and looting, the Brotherhood of Steel would focus on hoarding technology, and the Enclave would focus on wiping out mutants. This could add a whole new layer to the game, and I know an in-depth faction system would definitely bring me back to the game. However, I feel like to really make the most out of the faction PvP, the server's 24 player cap would need to be lifted to at least 32 for there to be any worthwhile action. If this can't be done on console, then at least allow PC servers to have more players. An integral design choice of Fallout 76 was for there to be absolutely no human NPCs. This means that dialogue with in-game characters is non-existent, and there are no living quest givers in the wasteland. This, coupled with a low player cap, has resulted in a very barren West Virginia. And some people may find following a trail of holotapes around Appalachia enticing, but I know I, along with a lot of other people, find it hard to invest in the Overseers storyline. To help breathe life into the game, I think the introduction of human NPCs in Appalachia would do the game some much needed good. These NPCs could tie in with factions, or there could be a caravan of out-of-state survivors that enter the wasteland in a future DLC. I don't mind which way it swings, but something needs to liven up the wasteland, because as it stands, the online players add little to the experience of Fallout 76. On a similar note, I also think that for a game that relies so heavily on other players, player interactivity is awfully shallow. There's voice chat, emotes, a trading system, a PvP system, and not much else. Bethesda could have been much more creative with the online aspect, and here are some features I'd like to see added. The PvP faction system, with joinable factions, faction quests, ranks, buildable bases around the map, territory control, a communication line between players within the faction, and so on. There's a lot they can do here. The ability to record your own holotapes that can be dropped and listened to by other players. Radio stations that can be broken into and used to transmit a repeated message, or maybe even record a live broadcast to everyone in the server via the Pip-Boy. Some sort of player-to-player questing system, where players or factions can send other players to do a mission and be rewarded for it. Endgame raids that require high-level loot and preparation. The ability to record messages on iBots that can be sent around the wasteland. Some sort of karma system that can be seen by other players and is affected by PvP and raiding. And a central hub area where PvP is disabled, so players can meet, trade and team up. Todd Howard has talked about adding private servers to the game, which would also be a great addition. If they can also integrate mods into the private servers and allow you to play a modded version of Fallout 76 solo, or just with your friends, that would be a great step forward for the game. All in all, if Bethesda treat this game like an early access title, which is basically what it is, and consistently add features like the ones I've just mentioned, as well as taking feedback from the community, I think they can turn this into a really solid game. We'll just have to see. So Bethesda Game Studios are currently working on Starfield, and are in the very early stages of developing Elder Scrolls 6. They've confirmed that both of these games are going to run on the Creation Engine, which is built upon the core code of the 21-year-old Gamebryo engine. While the age of this engine sounds terrible on paper, I've recently learnt that an old engine isn't necessarily bad, as Unreal Engine 4, the engine behind popular games like Fortnite, is based off of a 20-year-old engine. Red Dead 2 also runs on an engine that was built upon an almost 13-year-old engine that was originally designed for a table tennis game. So the problem with Bethesda's Creation Engine lies not with its age, but with the lazy and lackluster programming that Bethesda has done to modernise it. With a team of talented programmers that know what they're doing, and the time and money that Bethesda definitely has available, they could bring this engine into the current age of gaming without holding its games back a decade on the technical side. By the launch of Fallout 76, the engine still had 16-year-old bugs on it that were tied to the engine since Morrowind. And many of these bugs had been fixed by modders time and time again. If modders can continue to fix Bethesda's games with each release, then we have to ask why Bethesda can't. Laziness. Bethesda has already started work on Starfield, but they need to make sure that they either bring the Creation Engine up to modern standards, or ditch it for a new engine before they start work on Elder Scrolls 6. The engine in its current state is just not good enough. Little is known about Bethesda's next major release, beyond the fact that it will be a traditional Bethesda Game Studio single-player RPG, and judging by the name and teaser trailer, it will be set in space. The release date is yet to be announced, but we can probably expect it within the next 2 years, although the release date could well have been pushed back a few months, after the catastrophic reception of Fallout 76. I honestly hope this is the case, because after Fallout 4 and 76, they need to prove that they can still make good games. For starters, they need to make sure they have a silent protagonist and a speech system that does not mirror Mass Effect. I also hope they've listened to fans about the story, writing and dialogue concerns, because Outer Worlds, a game with a seemingly similar setting, is launching next year. Not only this, but this game is being developed by two of the founding fathers of the Fallout franchise, who work at Obsidian. the development team behind Fallout New Vegas. You can be sure that these guys are going to nail their story, writing and dialogue. This is the game that Bethesda has to absolutely nail. People love Skyrim, and if Bethesda messes up the Elder Scrolls series like they did with Fallout 76, that would be the no turning back point for a lot of their fans. This game will be their last chance to prove their worth, and if they fail, you can bet that a lot of players are going to turn their backs on Bethesda for good. For the last decade, Bethesda has been removing and dumbing down features of their games. Take for example, the spellcrafting of Morrowind, the class system of Oblivion, and the skill and karma system of Fallout 3. All of these have been removed entirely in the most recent releases of Fallout and Elder Scrolls. For every feature they add, another feature is lost. The storyline and quests also need improving. When I jumped straight from playing Oblivion to Skyrim, a big thing that I noticed is how the quest's writing quality has gone downhill. Skyrim did have some good quests, but Oblivion was full of them. Take for example the quest A Brush with Death, where you were tasked with finding a missing painter, only to find him inside of his last painting. Skyrim's main quest was cool and everything, but it was a bit simple, and I feel as if there were very few memorable characters throughout the game. Bethesda need to hire better writing talent, and I'd start with moving the head writer, Emil Paliarulo, back to game design. He did a good job on Oblivion's Dark Brotherhood questline, but for me and many others, Fallout 3, Skyrim, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76's storylines were beyond disappointing. Bethesda should also focus their attention on a storyline that has choices. These choices should change the outcome of the main quest, the world, and the fate of the characters involved. All quests, including side quests, should also be more open-ended, with multiple ways of completion. For a great example of how this can be done, take a look at the Fallout New Vegas quest, Beyond the Beef. This picture shows you all of the routes you can take to complete what is a miniature, insignificant side quest from the game. Now compare that to how Skyrim's quests were written. There's a big difference. Last but not least, this game needs a stable launch, with as few bugs as possible. Bethesda have a little bit of a reputation for buggy releases, and are also well known for never fixing them. This needs to stop. All in all, Bethesda need to work hard on this game, listen to what fans want, and not make a game that modders have to fix and complete. If Bethesda pull off anything like we've just talked about, I feel like they could get back on track. However, if they continue to release half-assed, buggy messes that have less features with each release, then the future is not bright for them. With their seemingly endless cock-ups of recent having ruined their reputation, they need to start getting things right. As Warren Buffett once said, it takes 20 years to build a reputation, and only 5 minutes to ruin it. Bethesda better start rebuilding, because their reputation is beyond ruined.